forms. But namaskara basically means to make a prostration, or to offer ourselves towards something. So when we say Om Ganganapataye Namaha and Ganesha Sharanam, we're saying I'm offering myself towards this energy of Ganesha or Ganapati. And Gana means member, can also mean the whole group. And Isha is that which can lead. So Ganesha is literally that energy that can unify the group. And Ganapati means two Ganapati. Ganapati means the same as Ganesha. The energy that can unify, that can lead, that can bring together. So when we sing Om Ganganapataye Namaha, we're saying, let me offer myself towards that which can unify all parts of myself. So what is that part of ourself, or that quality or attribute that we have that allows us to unify all our parts?
Conscience.
It's our conscience, yeah? So all yoga practice is basically an orientation towards conscience. Let me bow to that light of conscience. Let me step out of my conditioned ideas and let me invite this deeper cohesion. So this is Om Ganganapataye Namaha. Okay? Now when we practice doing that, what's important? If we're going to step outside our habitual ways of doing things, what habit do we need to develop?
Awareness.
We need to develop our awareness, yeah? So we have to, as it were, develop the habit of looking in ways that reach beyond our habitual way of looking. Yeah? Shall we say, we need to develop the habit of looking in ways that reach beyond our habitual way of looking. Is that easy? We're creatures of habit, yeah, and habits are very helpful. But they say in yoga, the habit we need to really practice developing and keep cultivating, keep practicing, is this habit of examining our habits, of looking in ways that are non-habitual, so we can check in. Is this habit still helpful for me? Sometimes habits form at a certain stage in life, and they're very appropriate and helpful for the situations that we're dealing with at that time in our life. But then maybe time goes by and those habits can become obsolete. But they're still the way that the system is operating because we're stuck on that autopilot. Yeah? So for example, we might set our course, maybe as a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old, and we're going in a certain direction. And at that point, that was the kind of direction of our conscience. But then life continues, new challenges, new responsibilities, new opportunities come into our life, and the course that we set when we were 20, 25, whatever it was, may no longer be appropriate. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah? Realistic? Yeah.
Much more from childhood.
Yeah, so it can go much like, but the point I want to make about saying when you're 20 is even when we make a conscious decision about it. And so this is the idea of having to be a pilot, like a skipper, when you're crossing the ocean. We can set a course, but the currents and the winds are unpredictable. So it means that we have to keep checking in. Where am I really? Am I moving in the direction I really want to? Now when we make the practice of expanding our awareness something that we cultivate, what might happen if that goes well? We will be able to see more clearly. Yeah? What's one of the words for this in Sanskrit? When things are revealed clearly.
Vidya.
This is vidya, yeah, also known as Veda. Have you heard this word Veda? So Veda literally means that which is revealed, like revelation, recognition. And there is this body of literature in the Indian system called Veda. And the Veda contains many different things. But it has two primary aims. The first aim in the Veda is how to live happily, harmoniously, prosperously in the world. How to be well and healthy here in this field of this body. And the second aim, having established that strong, stable, robust, healthy foundation, how can I then use this vehicle to recognize my essence and become free, as it were? But the first is the prerequisite for the second. You can't become free unless you cultivate this harmony here. Because otherwise you will be enslaved to the needs to restore balance. And this is called Veda. And traditionally there are 3 or 4 Vedas, these bodies of literature. But there is a text which is sometimes called the 5th Veda. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? And the 5th Veda is the Rāmāyaṇa. Say Rāmāyaṇa.
Rāmāyaṇa.
And Rāmāyaṇa is one of the epics in the Indian tradition. And this is the great story, or the great adventure of Rama. Say Rama.
Rama.
Now Rama, he's a prince, and he's the eldest son in his family. As the eldest son, and being a prince, what is his destiny?
To be king.
To be the king, yes? Now, the particular royal family that he's born into is known in Sanskrit as the Surya Vamsha. Let's say that together. Surya Vamsha. Which basically means the royal line of the sun. So Rama's destiny is to sit on the throne of the royal house of the sun. What does that mean symbolically? If you're sitting on the throne of the sun, it means basically to become established on the seat of enlightenment. One of the reasons the sun is venerated in the Indian tradition is that the sun is the witness of everything. The sun is illuminating the whole solar system. Everything on the planet it's a witness to. So the idea is when we become established in that full recognition, when our awareness becomes refined, so it's no longer hindered or impeded by our conditioned ideas and our limiting beliefs, then we experience Veda, and we can experience the recognition of the fullness of who we really are. Yeah? Does that sound exciting? Does that sound like something worth aiming towards in life? Yeah. So in the Rāmāyaṇa, it's called the 5th Veda because it gives us all these teachings of how to come to that wholeness, but in a story form, in a symbolic form. And in the Rāmāyaṇa, there are some principal characters, but we could say that all these principal characters represent different parts of one psyche, or of one conscious being, one human. So I may tell the Rāmāyaṇa in greater detail as the weekend goes on, but just this evening I want to set up a few kind of key points. So Rama, he's a very great child. By the time he's 16, he has gone beyond all his tutors in the palace, all his masters in political science and the martial arts, everything, statesmanship, he's just super qualified to be a king. But something is missing. It's interesting as well, his parents' names. His father is called Dasharatha. Say Dasharatha. Dasharatha. And his mother's called Kaushalya. Kaushalya. So Dasharatha means having 10 chariots. It's said in the Indian system that we have 5 sense powers. Same as our senses, yeah? And we also have 5 action powers. Do you remember the action powers? Some of you, we've spoken about them before. What are the 5 action powers? Speech and communication. Grasping, manipulating, picking up, putting down, all these manual capacities. To move in lots of different ways. To eliminate, to process, to digest, and also to reproduce, to recreate, to create. So we have these 5 action capacities, and these are said to be 10 chariots. And Kaushalya, his mother's name, means the one who is skillful. So the idea is that in this body we have these amazing chariots, these amazing vehicles of the senses and the bodily capacities. And innate within us there is skillfulness, there is ability. There are these things that naturally we can do as humans. These manipulative capacities are quite different to other animals. Our locomotive capacities, though modest, are incredible for their range. Compared to other animals, we have a great range of movement capacities, even though we might not swim as well as the fish, we may not climb as well as the monkeys, but we can do everything a little bit. So we have these really rather remarkable powers. But do we always deploy them with great skillfulness? Do we always keep the chariots running and keep them working together as a cohesive unit? What does that gesture mean, Laura? Say it.
It doesn't work.
Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes these different, if you think the chariot's like wheels, it's like the cogs are not connected sometimes. Now if there is a cog or a wheel or a chariot within this field, and it is left to rotate all by itself, what will it need to do? If it's not getting sustenance from the center, if it's not learning how to cooperate with all the other chariots, what's it going to do?
Just stop.
Well, it's going to have to create a survival tactic to look after its own short-term needs, yeah, because it's not being supported by the rest of the company. And so this is what often happens. We develop these splits and these schisms. Yes? What's the most popular play in the English language by the amount it's produced in the world? Hamlet, yes? And how is Hamlet? What is his situation? He is split. He's a schismatic being. And I think this is one of the reasons why that play has been so popular, so easy to relate to for so long, because we also experience this. Do you remember the Natalie Imbruglia hit? Nothing's right, I'm torn. Yes. Again, it was a hit because people could relate to it. Yeah, we do feel this split in our life, and yoga says it's altogether normal and natural that this happens, because the very instruments, the very body that we experience in, is constituted of this changing stuff of nature. We exist in nature, and what do we know about nature? What does nature literally mean? Going back to the word root, nut. Like in Scotland, now it's not so easy to get the wild salmon, but back in the day the salmon go back to their natal streams, yeah, what does that mean? Where they were born, yeah. So nature is that which is born. And what do we know about everything that's born? Sooner or later it will. And in between those two great changes, what is it going to experience without any doubt? Change, yeah? So we experience through this changing vehicle. So it's easy for us to get identified with change. And because all these different powers, sometimes we don't take such close care of them, they can get into habits or patterns of functioning in a less than optimally functional way. They can get used to having to operate in a disjointed or disconnected way. Yeah? And so we can get accustomed to a certain level of dis-ease. A certain level of pain or discomfort can become our deeply familiar comfort zone. And this is one of the challenges of modern society, when so many of the illnesses which afflict us are these chronic things. They're to do with our habits. So yoga is about systematically taking stock of our habits and the state of the field of our experience, and then steadily inviting deeper healing or harmonization. And in order to invite this deeper healing and harmonization, we need to focus the light of centered awareness. So we need to call on that sun, if you like, that helped us witness ourselves a bit more thoroughly than we've been in the habit of doing. Yeah? And then the Dasharatha, the 10 chariots, we can help them work as a great unit. Yeah? So we can transform this vehicle into one that operates optimally or skillfully. So this is what Rama is born to learn. Now the place where he's born, it's got an interesting name. Does anybody know Rama's birthplace? It's called Ayodhya. Say Ayodhya.
Ayodhya.
And Ayodhya literally means the place that cannot be conquered. So this is his home. This is where he has come from, the human being. The archetypal human has come from this place that cannot be conquered. And the idea in yoga is that we come from consciousness. We come from this infinite consciousness, infinite creative potential. And it's our destiny to return there. But when Rama's growing up, he's excelling in every aspect of life, and he meets his beloved, who's called Sita. What happens after not very much time? Ram and Sita are happy together, but then something happens. They get sent into exile. So they have to leave the kingdom of Ayodhya, and they have to go into the thick, dense forest. Everything goes well there for most of the time they have to be in the forest, but in the last year of the period of exile, what happens? Sita gets stolen away, she gets kidnapped. Now, in the Indian system, we've mentioned already the word Shiva and Shakti. Yeah, say Shiva.
Shiva.
Shakti.
Shakti.
Rama.
Rama.
Sita.
Sita.
Vishnu.
Vishnu.
Lakshmi.
Lakshmi.
So we have these different ways of personifying these different aspects of consciousness. So Shiva means the pure consciousness, and Shakti is its capacity or its power. When we translate that into the symbols of the Rāmāyaṇa, Rama's like Shiva and Sita is like Shakti. So when Sita is kidnapped, Rama becomes separate from his true capacity. He gets separate from his discerning, discriminating, clear awareness. He's not able to operate in the optimal way. Who kidnaps Sita? Ravana. Say Ravana.
Rama.
Now say Rama, 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 Rama. Rama, 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 Rama. And now say Ravana 4 times. Ravana, 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 Ravana. Do you notice a difference? It's maybe not enough to do it 4 times, but did you notice any difference?
There's less flow too.
There's less flow. Let's just do Rama we'll do it about 16 times. Rama, 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 Rama. Now just try it, Ravana. Ravana, 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 Ravana. Do you want to stop yet?
Yeah.
Rama, you can sing it all day. Do you notice it's easy?
It's almost like it's flat, but then the second one is more, it kind of goes up and down.
And when it goes down, what happens to your voice? Did you feel your voice tiring with Ravana? Yeah, just in a short time you notice this, yeah? So the idea is that Rama is the golden sun, if you like. Now Ravana is his alter ego, you might say. Is his shadow. Now if Rama is to become the sovereign of the field of Ayodhya, if he is to sit on that throne of enlightenment, then he has to go. How do you know if you're enlightened? You need to go into the darkest place imaginable to test it, yes? So Rama has to face the depths of his shadowlands. So when his discernment becomes the captive of his egoic strategic mind and empatterned ways, he has to find out where his discernment has been hidden. And in order to do that, he has to find and then penetrate the prison walls, if you like, and the castle walls, and the very attractive city walls of the constructs of his empathant behaviors. Does that make sense? Yeah? So often our limitations, they're quite familiar, yeah? Our limiting beliefs, they can be wound up or woven into our sense of who we are. So to dismantle them can be quite unsettling. If we have become habituated to a state of relative dis-ease, the introduction of harmony is going to be disruptive, unsettling. To a certain degree, it will be imbalancing. And so the idea in yoga is we have to proceed incrementally, steadily, realistically. We invite a deeper level of harmony, and then we allow that to integrate. And then step by step we keep proceeding, we keep refining. But we have to be realistic about it. We have to recognize, yeah, my comfort zone, that which I'm used to, has certain parts to it that maybe aren't really set up for long-term well-being. But I've been used to them for so long. So they're not going to go away in the click of a fingers. I will have to reattune them steadily. And so the rescue of Sita involves a great campaign and a great battle. And sometimes this is strange in yoga. There are many, many yogic stories, including perhaps the most famous and celebrated yoga teaching of all, the Bhagavad Gita, which are given on a battlefield. And this can sometimes, what do you think of that? Is it where you expect the yoga teachings to be given? What about that quiet grove here in the forest by the flowing river? Some teachings are given in such localities, but the really foundational teachings get delivered time and again on battlefields. And in the Rāmāyaṇa, once Sita has been kidnapped, there is a big campaign first to find her. And once she's been found, in this campaign there is one character who is particularly instrumental. Does anybody know who this is? Say louder, Ravi. Hanuman. And Hanuman is another very interesting being. His parents include, in a roundabout way, Shiva and Vayu. Say Vayu. Who is the god of wind, because Shiva agrees for part of him to be involved in the creation of this being, and the wind carries the seed which enters his mother's womb. So he is a child of consciousness and a child of energy, of prana, of the life force. What does that sound like? Does that sound like anybody you know? This is all of us, yeah? So Hanuman represents when we channel and deploy the life force very skillfully. And then we can foster this restitution, this rehabilitation of integrity through the whole field of our being. Then there is the battle, and it's quite an epic thing. In the Rāmāyaṇa, which is a big book, the Yuddha Kanda, the whole section of the battle, is very, very big. There's many, many episodes in it. And this is of tremendous symbolic importance, because the yoga practice is not a one-weekend affair. It is a whole life campaign. And the idea of, the word in Sanskrit is yuddha. Say yuddha. This means war or battle. But war and battle, like many English translations of Sanskrit words, are not particularly accurate representations of what the Sanskrit connotes. The denotation is similar, but the connotations are different, because the verb yud in Sanskrit carries much more the sense of to engage with deep presence. To engage with the deep presence that is the quality or characteristic of a great warrior. What is one of the Sanskrit words for warrior that everybody in this room has already heard?
Samurai?
I think that's a Japanese word, yeah? But similar. Somebody to say? Vira. Vira is more we'll talk about Vira in a moment, but there is a word for warrior, the one who can do a yuddha. And no, but the clue is in the sound. Yuddha. Okay, I'll give another clue. Very good, Brad. Yeah, I was going to have to start doing the Star Wars theme.
Is that Darth Vader? Is Darth Vader the sixth Vader then?
Vader is the father, yeah? The Dark Father. So, you've all heard of Yoda, yeah? Yes? Yoda in Star Wars. So Yoda is a Sanskrit word, and it means warrior. And George Lucas took the word straight from Sanskrit because Yoda is an exemplar of a yogic warrior. How is Yoda?
A hermit?
So he lives a long way away, yeah? He kind of... But even though he lives a long way away, what happens when there is a disturbance in the field of the galaxy?
He comes to bring peace.
He feels it. Yes? How does he feel it when he lives so far away? Where does he really live? He lives in the hub of the wheel. He lives in the center. Yoda is centered. In other words, he is balanced. The primary characteristic of the yogic warrior is what I sometimes refer to as 360-degree global equipoise, or 360-degree global equivision. Let's say that together. 360-degree global equivision. In other words, to see all around steadily. This is what it takes to be a warrior who serves the sovereign, whose duty is to protect the well-being of the whole field. Yeah? So the idea in the Sanskrit words, the war, if we hear war or battle, our ideas tend to get skewed, and we think of something very destructive and violent. But in Sanskrit, it's much more the idea of really having that commitment, that determination, that perseverance to engage with the difficulty and the challenge of life, to wrestle with all that it means to be a human. Does that make sense? And this is the idea of Virabhadra. Vira, say Vira.
Vira.
Vira is a Sanskrit word that means, amongst its denotations, not only hero or heroine, it means human being. And so the idea is that the Vira, or the Vira in the feminine, is that human being who has mustered the courage to wrestle with all that it means to be human. And this is what Rāma is learning when he fights this campaign, when he goes on this adventure to restore himself, to remember all of his parts, to bring himself back into a state of true connection, true cohesion. And so that's the idea of yoga being, it's a little bit of a struggle. It's hard work sometimes, in the sense that you've just got to keep at it. But it's its own reward. Have you noticed that the greatest satisfaction in life comes perhaps not when people give you everything you always wanted, but when you make a sustained effort for something that is dear to you, and you feel yourself moving in that direction steadily. Yeah? And that is in practice, yes, it's difficult to go and face those parts of ourselves that previously we preferred to keep at bay or to keep in the dark. But when we face them, what do we start to learn? When we make a habit of befriending those parts of ourselves that previously had been our own enemies, what is the experience that we gain from that? What's the reward for that work? Now we've got more friends, we've got more support, so we can face the challenges of life with a little bit more relaxation, a little bit more ease. And this is the idea of also the yoga teaching set on the battlefield. The aim is to become enemy-less. And how will we become enemy-less? By changing that which seemed like an enemy into our friend. If we try to destroy the enemies, generally we'll just create more enemies, yeah? So if we notice within this field, there is a certain habit which we think, well, that's not really functioning very happily, very healthily, and we try to stamp it out, what usually happens?
It's worse.
Things get worse, yeah? That type of aggressive attitude leads to more discomfort, more dis-ease, more disintegration. But if we have the presence to patiently look at the situation and see, how could I invite this back towards a place of centeredness, the work, the patient work that involves, also has the kind of almost alchemical effect of fostering new habits that can sustain that new, more integrated way. But that doesn't just happen in an instant. It's through the sustained steady practice. So we have this long campaign in the Rāmāyaṇa. But after a long campaign comes the day when Rāma faces Ravana on the battlefield. Now Ravana, I mentioned that Rama, he's very, very great. Ravana also, very, very great. And up to this point in both their lives, they have never met an adversary who they have had any doubt that they could overcome. But when Rama sees Ravana, and when Ravana sees Rama, what do they think? Yeah, they think, they can't quite believe that another being so mighty exists. They're both shocked. Now Ravana, he was so arrogant that he didn't think he needed to go out to fight at all. So he left it to his army, who got decimated over many days and weeks of campaign. When he finally goes out to battle, he's like death incarnate. He's fresh, he's rested, and this is mighty Ravana. He just destroys massive segments of Rama's army. But he has to do that. He fights all day to do that. Rama is at the rear of his ranks. And when Ravana finally breaks through and they see each other, they can't quite believe it. But Ravana has been fighting furiously all day long. Rama takes up his bow. One arrow knocks the shield from Ravana's hand. Another arrow knocks the sword from the other hand. A third arrow pierces his mail, his armor, at that particular point that makes it fall away. Ravana is defenseless in front of Rama. He can kill him with his next arrow, but he says, "Go home and rest and come back and face me when you are fresh." Now, to a man as proud as Ravana, how does that land? That's almost like a death in itself. But Rama knows that he'd been fighting all day and that he was waiting with all his strength and reserves. And when he saw Ravana, he couldn't quite wrap his head around how forbidding this adversary was. So next day, high noon if you like, Rama, even great Rama, is weighed down, anxious. He feels anxious and fearful about the outcome, and he also feels burdened by all the destruction of this battle that has raged for so long. So he is plagued by thoughts of the past, by his memory, and he's also plagued by imagining the potential terrible outcomes. Can we relate to Rama? Have you ever found yourself in this situation? You've come face to face with something in your psyche that, if I break through this, my whole life could be different, but... Yes? And we feel burdened by the past because the habits, they've got such weight, they've got such gravity, they've got such inertia. And to face this thing is so forbidding and unknown. What will happen? So Rama finds himself fraught with anxiety about the outcome and burdened by all of this ravaging destruction that has raged for so many weeks. But Rama is lucky. This is a showdown between, we might say, the soul and those patterns that would get in the way of the soul coming home to the innate fullness it really is. And so all the gods have come to watch this showdown. What does that mean? All the gods have come to watch. The gods in the Indian tradition, those great powers that reside in this field, like our senses, like our bodily powers, they are said to have a divine essence to them, a divine quality, because they help us perceive, they help us experience. Yeah? Have you noticed that when you're in a really challenging, trying situation, all your senses, all parts of you have to pay attention? Yeah? So when it's high noon, there's no hiding place. Everything comes to participate. And the voice of conscience is also going to speak. When we're really in a tight spot, help will come if we let ourselves be open to it. Yes? Today I went into a shop, and in the shop they were playing a tune from a band of my youth called James. Do you know the band James? Yeah? Which year were you born, Brett?
6.
Wow. Yeah, their biggest hits were before then, but they're still active. They have some great songs.
I'll have to look into it.
And one song, I can't remember which song it is. Help comes when you need it most. Does anybody know which James song it is? Anyway, that line played as they didn't have what I was looking for in the shop. But this is the idea that the conscience will always speak to us when we need it, if we just have the courage and the presence to listen to it. So in the archetypal symbolic story of Rāmāyaṇa, a great sage called Agastya Muni comes to Rama and speaks to him in his hour of need. And he tells him, Rama, Rama Mahabaho, Rama, you who are strong, you who are a great hero, Shrinu Guhyam Sanatanam, listen to that eternal secret that is always pulsating in the cave of your heart. With this, you can overcome all adversaries on the battlefield. You'll be able to overcome all your enemies. You will be able to emerge victorious amidst the chaos and tumult of life. And then, what Agastya gives to Rama is called the Aditya Hridayam. Say Aditya. Hridaya. Can you guess what Hridaya means? Hrit. Hrit, the heart. So Hridaya. And Aditya is a word, it's one of the names for the sun. So Agastya tells Rama, he says, listen to this hymn, this mantra to the sun. And then he teaches him this mantra to the sun. It's 30 Sanskrit verses. Rama, being Rama, memorizes it immediately, assimilates its deep, profound symbolic meanings immediately, repeats it 3 times. Even Rama needs to repeat it to let it fully assimilate. And then, having got it, he's ready to face Ravana. In other words, he is ready to overcome that part of himself that is getting in his own way. He's able to dismantle those empatterned ways that would limit his experience of his true self. So what does Agastya give to Rama? He gives him the Aditya Hridayam. Now I will recite this for you tomorrow in Shavasana. Okay? But today we're going to go straight to these mantras to the sun. So in the Aditya Hridayam, I'll perhaps just mention a couple of verses in it because I should maybe do that. Sarva Mangala Mangalyam Sarva Pava Pranashanam Chinta Shoka Prashamanam Ayur Vardhanam Uttamam Rashmi Mantan Samudyantan Deva Sura Namaskritam Pujyas Vyasvantam Bhaskaram Bhuvaneshwaram. So he tells him, Rama, you need to focus on the sun. The sun which is revered by all of the gods and demons, by all forces in the universe. The creative, sustaining, destructive forces, they all have their source in the sun. They all turn to the sun for their nourishment. Everything in the creation, everything in the universe depends on the sun. In other words, everything depends on the light of your conscience. Rama, when you attune to the light of your conscience, when you bring yourself into a state of at-one-ment, when you are truly at one, when your heart, your mind and your gut, when the wisdom of your body and your senses, of your mind, your intellect, your emotions all line up, cohere, and all say yes together in harmony, then you will not fail. So Rama, everything you need is in you. You were born with this amazing gift of conscience. Let it be your practice to attune to conscience every day. As you practice attuning to conscience steadily, you can eradicate those barriers that you have allowed to be erected between you and that pilot light of that voice inside, or the voice of the angel on your shoulder.